Children make up roughly half of the nearly 3 million refugees forced to flee since the start of the invasion, and many have been permanently traumatized. According to a spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees, the people who are coming over are a bit more in a state of shock because they've experienced the conflict more directly. With me now, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. She's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And Congresswoman, thank you for being here. You are also one of a small number of members of Congress who have in your background refugee status at one point. You were a child. Tom Malinowski, he was actually born in communist Poland before coming to the U.S. as a kid. Carlos Jimenez was born in Cuba but fled in the revolution. And there are just a few of you who have had this experience. So just talk to us as somebody who was a little kid having to leave your home. I don't want to make you revisit that trauma, but I can imagine that you're relating to these children that are having to flee Ukraine.
Well, it's good to be with you, Joy. It is really heartbreaking to see the images that are coming out of Ukraine, as one of few members of Congress who not only fled war as a child, but lived through war and experienced war as a civilian. I can tell you it is really quite traumatizing to go through that process as a child, not knowing whether you can go to sleep, where the bombs are going to fall, and if you are going to wake up alive, and fleeing and leaving everything that is familiar to you is something that children live with for a long time. It's been more than 30 years that I fled war, and to this day I still remember the noise of the bombs. I still can visibly see the everything being shattered around me, and I can still feel the sense of fear. And so I do hope that we are continuing to do everything that we can to provide shelter and a home for these babies and their families that are fleeing.
And it's particularly, it's particularly jarring because, half of the 3 million people who have fled Ukraine are kids, are children, and we're talking about a huge movement of women and children. We saw a similar sort of desperation coming out of Afghanistan. We've now recently given TPS to Afghan refugees. But the issue is once you've moved, now you're in a foreign place. Now you're someplace that you don't know. You're going to school with kids you don't know, that you may not share language with, culture with. Talk about that piece of it, of being in this new place where you have to now become accepted and fit in, and this might be permanent. This is your new life.
Yeah, a couple of things. The journey in fleeing is also long and traumatizing. We've heard from families who've said it took them 12 hours. Some of them, it took them days. For my own family, it was weeks for us to be able to get to a safe place. And then the in-between that is also really concerning for the stability of many of these children. They don't know that the new homes that they are in is going to be permanent, and that sort of instability is very hard. Once they do find a permanent home, as I eventually did here in the United States at the age of 12, getting assimilated and accustomed to a new home is also something that requires your neighbors and your new community to put their arms around you. And, we are living in a time in our history as a world where there are more people displaced than any given time in our history. We obviously are seeing what's happening in Yemen, over 2 million people displaced, over 11,000 children have died in that conflict. We've obviously seen it in Syria. We've seen it in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and so many other places. And I think it's commendable, really, for a lot of these neighboring countries that do open up their doors where there's an influx of people that are crossing their border and create policies. And I hope that the compassion and generosity that Ukrainians are being met with is something that leads to policy changes in the future But I think also here in the United States and other countries that are not taking in an influx of Ukrainian refugees, like Poland and Hungary and other places are, we should be providing them with the support that they need in order for them to be able to accommodate. We're hearing something like 1.5 million Ukrainian refugees go into Poland, and they're going to need our support.
And by the way, there are Ukrainians at the southern border. I wish we had more time because we need to get into that irony that they're trying to come in through the southern border where we're keeping people back with Title 42. Whole longer conversation. Wish we had more time. But that I will just thank you, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Thank you very much.